So I am just finishing my doctorate of clinical psychology, so I'm not actually practicing as a clinical psychologist just yet. And I'm going to be talking today about sensing and responding, which is a framework for a mindful way of being in the world and a mindful way of making decisions in the world as well. My doctoral research is in mindfulness integrated cognitive behavioral therapy, which is not to be confused with mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. Mindfulness integrated cognitive behavioral therapy, or MICBT, is being developed by Bruno Cayun. It's an extension of Vipassana mindfulness and integrating that with cognitive behavioral therapy. The real innovation I think that this approach brings is in the co-emergence model of reinforcement, which it's based upon. So that brings in interoceptive sensations into the therapeutic context. So the co-emergent model of reinforcement is a way of kind of splitting up the present moment experience. For those of you who are familiar with CBT, similar to the 5-part model, so you've got a stimulus, which could be internal or external. You sense the stimulus with your 5 senses, then you make an appraisal of that, which is classic CBT so far, and that's an idiosyncratic appraisal. It's dependent on your personality and your situation and your mood and so on. And then the co-emergence part is where interoceptive sensations, so body sensations that we can feel in our gut or anywhere in our body, will co-emerge with the thoughts that we have or the appraisal that we have about a situation. So that's the kind of mind-body connection. And where the reinforcement comes in is that it says that our response to that situation will actually be in response to the strength of the interoceptive conditioning that's reinforcing that. So we're not actually responding to the situation or even to our thought, but to the actual sensation that we can either sit with or we can kind of react against or try and push away. So that's kind of the basis of what I want to talk about today, which is kind of an extension of that, sensing and responding. And that is, basically 2 parts. Sensing, which is being aware of what's going on in that present moment, the thoughts, the sensations, what's happening in the environment. And doing that in a non-judgmental way, a non-reactive way, when you're not taking it personally. That's kind of that mindful approach. And then responding is making an adaptive response to what you're sensing is going on. So I've found, as I've moved through life and used this in therapy in my intern year last year, that I've noticed sensations that emerge in the process of being with someone when they're talking about what's going on for them. And I've noticed also that I can make decisions from that place as well. And if I kind of ignore the sensations, then often they can come back to bite me, or I'll miss something that's really important. And if I pay attention to the sensation of a kind of like a stirring in my gut and they talk about their father or something like that, then quite often, even if my mind hasn't caught up yet, my body is telling me that that's actually important and I need to pay attention to that, and it's kind of been validating for me in my experience. So where I think it starts to get really interesting is that our body sensations actually say something about what we'd traditionally refer to as morality or ethics, whereby sensations that co-emerge with thoughts about a fixed sense of self or a fixed sense of seeing the world tend to be more heavy, more agitated, more constricted, kind of that anxiety or that shame or guilt. So these are thoughts like, I'm not good enough, or I should have got that promotion, not him, or that idiot driver cut me off. So sensations that have to do with thoughts around empathy and connection and compassion tend to be lighter, more subtle, and freer and less agitated. So I'm so happy for them. It's not actually a reflection on me that she got that promotion. That driver was completely unaware. I wonder what was going on for him. So sensations are tied to and inextricably linked with our values. They're also always in the present moment. situated in a given context. They're non-abstract, and they don't lie. We can't lie with our sensations. Our bodies don't lie, although we can trick ourselves into creating stories about them. So we're talking beyond just the reactive sensations of kind of craving and aversion to deeper sensations that can help us discern what's really going on. So I want to share a story of my personal journey with sensing and responding. So as I've developed a daily practice of mindfulness, many of the struggles I had with reactivity, getting stuck in rumination, etc., it simply started to fall away. And what I could start to sense was my deeper values, more easily and more of the time. I've grown up in a world where we learned about climate change and deforestation at primary school. But by the time I got to university, we still weren't doing anywhere near enough on issues like this, and a whole range of issues. I'd always cared about that, but it had sort of been in the background. And something I'll get to later, or when I have time, or when I've solved my own personal things. But because of the sensing process, those deep-seated feelings I had about the climate and my connection with it were right there. They weren't abstract, they're not in theory, not something I should do, but more a sense of deep knowing that this was important to me. And that's where responding came in. So I knew that ignoring the sensation or this feeling of knowing wasn't actually a healthy way to respond. Mindfulness tells us this, therapy tells us this. That it never really pays to avoid or to suppress feelings. So what would an adaptive response look like to this? It's a big question and required some deep thinking, but thinking alone didn't provide me with an answer. It was really sensing and responding that came in and helped me as I was moving through the world and talking to people. So sensing and responding through conversations led to a real resonance with an organisation called Lifehack, who at the time were running programs for people working in youth wellbeing to try and create systemic change in that space. A few months later, I found myself as a participant in one of their programs, the Flourishing Fellowship, where I learned a lot about social enterprise, design thinking, te ao Māori, and community building, among other things. So this was really a lot of extra strings to my bow as a budding clinical psychologist. And it was here that I was validated in my belief that mindfulness tied in with climate change, that practicing something which helped us to focus, helped with task persistence, helped with emotion regulation, creativity, and empathy building, so that 2 minutes, could help develop the qualities needed to act on the climate. So I started teaching mindfulness courses to social entrepreneurs and activists. But what really came to the fore was sensing and responding. So I met a whole lot of people that were doing similar work in the community, in business, in healthcare, and so on. And as I had these conversations, I was really paying attention to what was going on kind of in my sensory experience. So my idea to expand Mindfulness for Change, which I was calling it at that time, was to run more courses in the community and subscribe more people to kind of running courses and so on. But this fell flat in conversations. When I mentioned it, there was kind of not that much energy for it. Didn't really trigger a sense of excitement in people. And so what did seem to resonate with people and generate this sense of excitement was of joining people together in community, because everyone was doing kind of their own thing or working in groups of 2 or 3. And so the more I talked about this idea of joining people together in community, the more energy there was for it. And so that became Mindfulness for Change, a community of practitioners who also saw that their work was contributing to wider change in the systems that we live and play in, whether that's healthcare or education or so on. So it wasn't really my idea, this thing that became Mindfulness for Change. It was something that was more co-created and a kind of synthesis through the sensing and responding process. So what I want to end with is just that the sensing and responding process has been really useful for me. A number of my friends and colleagues have adopted it as well as a kind of way of making decisions in the world. And that I want to create a sort of science of it, that we need to research this about how our sensations play into the kind of decisions that we make in healthcare, but also in community as well. So yeah, hopefully we can talk more about that this afternoon. Kia ora.